Welcome to the Being Soul Confident podcast with me, your host, Nicola Tonsaga, the podcast where we are talking all things soul, where we're widening the conversation about what soul is so that you can trust it, live it, be it, so that you are being soul confident. Hello, and welcome back to Being Soul Confident. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you have had a good few days since our last episode. And this week, I am absolutely delighted to welcome the most gorgeous of ladies, the lovely Gill Edwards, who helps people to holistically manage stress. So I know we're going to have a great conversation, and Gill has been on quite a journey herself. So I know there are going to be lots of beautiful insights that she's going to bring forward. Without further ado, Gill, welcome. It's amazing to have you here. Can I ask you to just introduce who you are and share a little bit about yourself for those people that are watching and listening?
Well, hi, Nicola. Thank you so much for having me on. This is a privilege for me. I love your work and I love to see what you're doing. And yeah, it's a big thing for me to be on here.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's an absolute pleasure, my love.
So I'm Gill Edwards, for those that don't know me, or for those that do, and I basically I struggle with having a title because my work covers so much. But basically, I help ladies through stressful times, but using the whole caboodle, the whole self, the environment, what you put into your body. Who your friends are, who your colleagues are you getting support anywhere? So I look at the whole picture, I don't just do a mindset, because everything is interlinked with everything else, which is what I found out through my own experience of becoming overwhelmed and stressed out and collapsing. So through research and experience and basically through research and lots of work on myself, I gathered together loads of guidance and stuff, finding out exactly what had happened to me to cause this collapse that happened to me, which has happened to me 3 times, to be perfectly honest. And it wasn't until the 3rd time that I really looked into it and thought that I'm not going back into that black hole again. I need to sort myself out. And there's only me can sort myself out. Nobody else can do it for me. Yeah. I've got to do it myself. So that's when I started doing research into stress management, the mindset, the foods I was eating. Hence I'm vegan while I've got kale on my chest. And I thought, I'm sure I could start helping people around this if they want to be helped, obviously. And it's first realising that you're in that place in the first place. That's where it starts. And it's all got to do with you inside. It's got to do you. And like you say, to do with your soul. That's where it all starts, which I didn't. And that's why I ended up being in such a state, to be perfectly honest. But now I'm here.
So when you say, and we're very grateful that you're here, so when you say it was kind of that connection to soul, but it wasn't because you weren't, what do you mean by that? Was there just a disconnection to who you were? Was there a disconnection to life? Were you kind of going through the motions on autopilot? Can you share a little bit about your journey for us, Gill? Because I know there will be lots of people that resonate with this.
Yeah, all that you've said. I totally completely lost myself. I am a people pleaser, which doesn't help, but I mean, lots of people are people pleasers anyway. And I am still a people pleaser, but I can manage it better now than what I did at the time. So what everybody else wanted, I was there straight away, and I always came at the bottom of the pile. So I did lose myself in other people, in other situations. I was doing all different shifts, covering for people, going in, like working 7 days a week, working like an early, late, and then sometimes, especially if it snowed, you'd end up doing the night as well, because people couldn't get in, and then the early. So it was a big thing at work, which is what I thought the problem was, especially on an intensive care unit where I was working at the time. But apart from all that, I completely lost myself because I wanted to please others. I wanted to be liked.
Yeah.
I think we all do anyway, but I felt that goes back to my childhood as well. So there's a load of stuff going on, which I found out after this my third collapse, and I researched it all and looked into my life and what I've been doing and everything else. So yeah, so I did lose myself and just went through the motions day to day. The washing, the ironing. I was a single parent as well. I did have a lot of help from my parents, don't get me wrong, but it was still down to me, to me. I did have the childcare, but I'd still got to work my shifts around because my mum and dad worked as well. So I'd still got to work my shifts around that, them. But at the time in nursing, you were lucky if you could get anybody to swap with you, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So because they got their own stuff going on, so it was hard. Um, yeah, but hey ho, I came through it, and I'm here now.
And I suppose, when we think about the pressures within life, and if we think about kind of stress particularly, very often we think about stress from a mind perspective, don't we? We think about what we're worrying about. We think about the pressures that we've got in terms of what we've got to get done, what we've got to do. But actually, and you said you work with a whole system, kind of the whole body system, and actually the whole body is a system. So I guess if we're carrying stress anyway, through our nervous system, through our body, then the mental pressure that we put on ourselves is just stress upon stress upon stress upon stress, isn't it? And I guess sometimes it's that bit of the final thing is the thing that with the saying that broke the camel's back. But actually, it's a compound effect, sometimes over a number of years, of all of the pressures that we're placing on ourselves, but also all of the ways that we're not actually recognising other areas of stress, and also not recognising what we need to do to actually take care of ourselves and look after ourselves properly.
That's exactly true. Yes. I mean, I was in such a state. I didn't realise I was in such a state. I was just going with the flow. Do you know what I mean? As far as I was concerned. But the first time it happened to me, like I said to you, I just walked onto the intensive care unit one day on a late shift, and I looked around. There was a man who was there, jumped off a train, trying to commit suicide. There was a man pulling all his lines out. There was blood spurting everywhere. There was a woman who'd run over a child by mistake. There was heart patient. There was just everything going on. The alarms were going off everywhere. And I just stood there in the middle of the unit. I thought, can't do this anymore. And I loved that job. I loved the cut and thrust. I loved having to think on your feet constantly. Much preferred it to ward work. I found ward work quite boring, you know what I mean? But this, you got to be on your toes all the time. And I loved it. And it was just so not me to walk on the unit. And because I mean, I've been through loads and loads of other different stuff, for 10 years, and nothing had ever affected me like this. And, but I just came to a sudden stop. And that's what the body does. It just goes, enough. That is enough. You're not coping. That is enough. Stop it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens in the brain. And I mean, one of the things I always say is look after your vagus nerve, because that goes from your brain all the way down through to your heart, your lungs, and down to your stomach. And that's where your parasympathetic nervous system helps and calms everything down. But we don't look after the vagus nerve. We just keep going, 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 going.
So I suppose if we look at it from that perspective, so if we're looking after our vagus nerve, which helps us to recognise stress or helps us to manage stress, is it both?
It helps really to manage stress.
Okay, so if we're looking after the vagus nerve, presumably we also still need to be in the place where we are recognising the pressures that we're placing on ourselves, or we're recognising that if we're in a pressured environment or we're in a place within of stress within our life that we're not recognizing or managing how we release that or how we come out of that.
That's right. Yes. I mean, the stress is there for a reason, and
Yeah.
it's part of the reptilian brain, which was the first brain we ever had. I mean, we've had the other two brains, the emotional brain, and then the frontal cortex, the thinking brain on top of that. But originally, we had the reptile, what they call the reptile brain, which housed the fight and flight
Yeah.
response, because we didn't want to get eaten. I mean, big
Yeah,
animals now.
absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've still got this reptile brain. Well, not unfortunately, because we do need it, because we don't want to walk across the road and get run over.
Yeah.
So we do still need the lookout, the amygdala, the lookout and stuff. So we do still need it, but we use it in the wrong way now, because we think of deadlines as a threat. We think of somebody shouting at us, or somebody, saying things about us behind us back. That's a threat. Everything in life has become a threat to us. We don't have saber-toothed tigers anymore. Well, not that I know of anyway.
Who knows?
No, well, you don't know, do you? We might be aliens wandering around. We don't know, but we do have all these other stressors now,
Yeah.
which we don't realise are stressors. And if we don't realise the stressors, then how are we going to know how to handle it? You know what I mean? But what we can do, and everybody can do, is just sit yourself and say, if you start worrying about something, say, okay, amygdala, thank you for keeping me safe, because I know that's what you're going to do, but I've got this now. And then that just gives you time to take a breath and work out what it is, what's the problem, and what solutions can you come up with to it.
Yeah.
That's one part of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The vagus nerve is part of that process. You say, okay, amygdala, thank you very much for keeping me safe, but I've got this now. You set your vagus nerve off. The sympathetic nervous system comes down and the parasympathetic nervous system will rise.
Okay.
One of the biggest things for a parasympathetic nervous system is taking some deep breaths. As simple as it sounds, counting to 10.
Yeah.
Yes, it works. Take a few deep breaths, count to 10, and you'll find your vagus nerve will calm everything down.
So part of what I suppose I'm hearing as you're talking is that when we really get to that place where we're at breaking point, which is where you were, we're really actually in a place of disconnection to ourselves. So it's all this energy up here, isn't it? And we're really not connecting to the body.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, when we're able to really allow ourselves to manage how we experience things, our levels of stress, when we're able to bring ourselves back into a much more relaxed state, we have that connection to ourselves that is actually a connection through the body, a connection to the whole of us, as opposed to just really, really living within this space of the mind.
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly right. What we need to do is, every time you think there's a threat, I mean, I'm using the term threat.
Yeah.
Don't see them as threats, they're just annoyances or whatever. But every time we see anything like that, we just need to stop, just stop and say, like I've said, amygdala, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. But just take a deep breath and pull yourself back into who you are. What's your intuition telling you at this moment in time? Because it might be a threat that that you're not quite sure of, but if you just sit with yourself, and I don't mean who you think you are, I mean sit with yourself.
Yeah.
Bring yourself back into the situation and say, right, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Who am I? What to me? Is it true? No, it's not true. It's not you. You are reacting. This isn't you. This isn't who you are. You're just reacting to a situation.
But it's really interesting, isn't it? And there's something that caught my attention in what you've just shared, Gill, that also takes me back to something that you mentioned at the very start. And what you said was, we need to connect into who we are, not who we think we are.
That's right.
Yeah. And that can be very, very difficult for us, or it can be very, very difficult for lots of people. And what you said at the beginning of the podcast was that the only person that can, or excuse my paraphrasing, but we're the only people that can change. We're the only people that can make the change for ourselves. And the problem is, I think in some respects, is that when we have that space where we are, okay, let's sit with who I am, sometimes it can be really difficult to sit with who we actually are. Because if we sit with who we actually are, then all of those illusions, those scales that we've got in front of our eyes tend to drop away, and we are actually in a place and we're actually in a position where we have to look honestly at where we are within life, and then we have to do something about the things that are really difficult or causing us a lot of problems. So when we sit with ourselves, that can be very, very difficult for people who are actually in a place where they're experiencing a lot of challenge, a lot of stress, because that sitting means that actually we've got to look at that and deal with it. Rather than just kind of, let me just carry on for another day, let me just carry on for another day. So that's quite a hard place to get to, isn't it? How did you get to that space where you were actually really able to sit and think, okay, this is who I am and this is what I've got to do and these are the changes that I've got to make?
To be perfectly honest, I got myself a coach.
Okay.
That was the very first thing I did. Yes, I was doing research. Yes, I was doing research and I was looking up everything I could find to help myself. But I was thinking of the physical.
Yep.
Getting my mind back to what's it. But once I got myself a coach, what actually happened was I was on antidepressants, and I realised I was only myself could get myself out of this mess, and I didn't want to go back down into that black hole again. And I was sitting reading a health magazine, to be perfectly honest, and I love spirituality and stuff like that. And there was a lady who called Dawn Breslin. I don't know if you know her. She's a Scottish lady, and she'd worked with Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and people like that. And she'd written 3 books on confidence. So I'd completely lost all my confidence. And I thought, I need to do this. But it was down in London. I live in Stoke, and I couldn't go anywhere on my own. I was having panic attacks if I went out the house on my own. So my lovely hubby said to me, if you really want to do it, I'll come with you. I'll go do the touristy thing. You go and sort yourself out and do what you want to do. So I did that. And even though some of the things there was so simple, and there was a variety of people there was actually a lad there who, because we did some meditation, which I'd never done before. We did some meditation, and this lad said, I'm sorry, but I can't visualise. You can't visualize.
Yeah.
So we had to sort of say, well, what do you hear? What can you smell? And use your other senses type of thing. And he managed okay, but he couldn't actually see anything, what she was talking about. And it just, because it calmed me down so much, and I thought, I want to do this. I really want to do this. So I took up a meditation practice. I looked up Joe Dispenza, found Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've been doing his meditations ever since, to be perfectly honest. And but there was a girl there. I know it seems as if I'm going off on a tangent, but I will come back.
Tangents are good; they serve a purpose.
There was a girl there called Tracy Wall, and she was a coach. She'd been a bank manager, and she was now a life coach. And she'd gone there because she wanted to do the confidence course to get accreditation and things like that. So I went back and did the confidence course as well, but I didn't know her at this point. And Dave and I were sitting having breakfast, and this beautiful, tall, she wasn't, tall, sandy-haired lady came walking past, saying hello to everybody, straight-backed, big smile on her face, and it was breakfast time. And I thought, I want to be like that. I want to be like that. And it turned out we were on the same course. I didn't know at the time. And we actually palled up to do some of the sessions together.
Yep.
And she eventually became my coach, my life coach. And she's really, really good. She's very, very good with mindset and stuff. But it was through learning through other people. And she said to me one time, she said, the first thing you need to do is to become aware. You need to become aware. And I thought, how do I do that? And she said to me, I know it's hard, but you need to sit with yourself and just ask yourself some questions about who you think you are, and see what comes up, and see if there's if any sort of opposites come up, and see and ask yourself why do I think that, but then this other thought's coming in that negates that. So why? And like answers will come, and eventually I realised that it was like spirit within me that was, or whatever, what I classed as spirit within me. It was like my consciousness, myself. I was part of a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And that's how it started anyway.
And I think when you have that experience where you start to be aware of yourself within that aspect of your consciousness, as opposed to this is who I am right here, but you're really sitting, and there's kind of an expansion of yourself, isn't there? So there's a feeling that just starts to emanate, that just lifts you a little bit, and kind of you're aware of, I guess, more of yourself. You're aware of more than the physical. You're aware of being more of yourself. And some people would call that themselves. Some people would call that their consciousness. And some people would actually call that their soul. But that moment, when you kind of really start to connect with that is really beautiful, because you suddenly realise that there's so much more to you.
Yeah, you do. It completely amazed me. And it was like, I want to do more of this, and find out more. And that's like where Dr. Joe Dispenza came in. And because one thing we did was watch the film The Secret that was there. And it was the first time I'd come into any contact with anything like that. I mean, this was 2007, 8 or something like that. And I'd not been spiritually aware before. And that set me on the path to
into the rabbit hole.
There's a whole universe out there. In fact, there might be multiple universes out there. We know nothing. We know absolutely nothing.
No, and even now, with the kind of the more knowledge that we do have and the more things that we do know, I always think, and I say this to the people I'm working with and with students as well sometimes, that as soon as we think that we know something, we realise that what we know is just like less than 1% of what there is actually out there. And most of it we can't really understand within our human experience, because there just isn't the capacity within the way that our mind functions to really understand, I guess, who we are in that aspect of consciousness and exactly everything that means. But it is a little bit like Alice going down the rabbit hole, isn't it, when you start to explore that?
Yes, because there's just so much, and it's like, I mean, it's like all the Eastern philosophies and stuff that have been going for thousands of years.
Yeah.
I mean, I love feng shui.
Yeah.
It's my thing, to me. I feel I met my husband through feng shui. I got promoted because I feng shuied my house and things like that. Coincidence? Who knows? But I believe in it because I believe in energy. I believe that everything is energy, and we're all vibrating all the time. Even this desk you think solid is actually vibrating.
Yep.
And it's been proved, like with glass tables, and all of a sudden they shatter out of nowhere. And it's because the mixture's not quite right, and because it's all vibrating, it just shatters.
Yeah.
So even things you think are still are not still.
It's just the way we perceive them, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm just learning, and I'm 69 years old. I'm 70 next year, and it's like I'm still learning. Do you know what I mean? And I'll always be learning because there's just so much, like you say, you think you've got so much, you think you're there, and then something else happens. They found now a proton that only moves in one direction, unless it's you look at it another way, and then it moves in another direction, and which is totally opposite to what they thought protons were doing. And it's just, oh, I mean, where does it end? You know what I mean? It's just
Absolutely. And I
fascinating.
think that the more we know, the more we have the capacity to know. And I think learning is something that is really beautiful because I think it both expands who it's possible for us to be, but it also challenges us to become more. It challenges us to think differently. It challenges us to look at things from a different perspective. And so I think that ability to be a lifelong learner, either in a specific area of life or within life itself, I think is actually something that really keeps us energized, that keeps us vital, and that actually keeps us wanting to live life and
Yeah,
actually really be, kind of really embrace it and really be part of it.
yeah. I mean, when I think of my mum, God rest her soul, little duck. She'd been a nurse. She was with special needs. She was a ward sister when they used to have like the homes,
Yeah.
the hospitals for them. Um, and I spent most of my childhood up there, to be perfectly honest. Christmas days were spent on the children's wards and things like that. And I forgot what I was going to say now. Oh yeah.
No.
So, but she took early retirement, and but she got no friends. The only friend she had one good friend called Mary, who was one of the other ward sisters. But she'd never made any friends round where we live. She came from Sheffield. My mum did. My mum and
Mm.
dad met in the war, and when the war ended, because my mum was on the radar, my dad was on the guns, and they went back to Sheffield. But there was no work for my dad. But my granddad here, there was a Michelin tyre factory in Stoke. So my granddad got him a job on the Michelin tyre factory, so they came to Stoke, and hence
Yeah.
why I'm a Stoke not a Sheffield girl. My eldest sister was born in Sheffield, but my mum had no friends, and she never. I mean, she was really friendly, but she never sort of. All she bothered about was the children and her work and her hospital work. Do you know what I mean? Nursing and stuff. But when she retired, she got nothing.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And all she did was watch cricket in Rancorn on cricket. Thought he was gorgeous, and read Mills and Boon books. That's
Yeah.
all she did.
Yeah.
And so eventually she did get dementia, and I'm sure to God partly because she was doing nothing with the brain at all.
And I would agree with you. I think because my grandmother had dementia, bless her, and my gran was she was one of those people where obviously she was part of the war efforts. She worked in the factories. My granddad was a paratrooper, but my gran, very much like your mum, she brought up her children and she worked. And actually, in those days, I mean, my gran had 2 or 3 part-time jobs to make the ends meet because my granddad actually was. Had very ill health for much of his adult life, and literally everything was the family, the housework, and then going out to work to bring some money in to make ends meet. And there wasn't any capacity, I think, within my grand's experience for her to learn anything or to advance herself from a mindset, from a knowledge perspective. And my grand's favorite thing would be to read the People's Friends magazine,
Yeah,
and she would watch Emmerdale. I mean, I
yeah,
always, whenever I hear, if I've got the TV on, whenever I hear the Emmerdale music come on, I always think of my grandma. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that if we want to do that, but there is something about stretching the mind. There is something about either learning something or learning about ourselves by doing something, whether it's going to, a dance class, or it's taking ourselves into a different situation or a different environment. There is something about keeping ourselves stretched and keeping ourselves expanding and keeping ourselves growing, that I'm sure actually serves our health generally, holistically, but also particularly our mental health as we
Oh, definitely, yeah.
as we start to get older as well.
Yeah, and also, obviously, your neural pathways, all the synapses, you get new synapses meeting up all the time
Yeah.
if you keep learning and stuff. But also if you have got friends, if you are social. Mum never went out the house. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It was, looking at it now, it's really sad, and I probably would have made her go out somewhere. But you need friendships. You need people.
Yeah.
We are social beings.
We are social beings, aren't we? But
Yeah.
I think it's very easy, particularly if you're, and obviously we're both lucky because I work for myself, you work for yourself, and I think when you're in business by yourself, you recognise the importance of connections,
Yeah.
both in business but also out of business. But I think if you have a really busy life and you have a really busy job, and you are also bringing up a family, sometimes in those moments where you're not working and you're not looking after the children, you just want some downtime for you. And sometimes it doesn't always register that, I hear lots of stories from people about, friends and friendships that kind of really just start to fade. Not because there's any desire for them to fade, but actually people are just really, really busy. And when they get a moment to themselves, they don't want to go to the pub. They don't want to go for coffee. They just need that moment to breathe. And we all need what we need. But actually that connection that we have with other people is really, really important.
It really is. And I mean, it's been proved to be, part of the lifespan is connection, because we are meant to socialise.
Yeah.
So whether that's socialising at work, whether it's socialising with your family, you know what I mean? But it's like, I mean, my mum had got us coming round to her, but that was like for an hour every day,
Yeah.
somebody were there. The rest
Yeah.
of the day, she was totally on her own, which makes a difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, social connection is part of my stress release as well.
And I guess it's because it is that whole body thing, isn't it? And I guess in some respects, although we don't maybe really consider it in that way, I'm
No, we
sure
don't.
there are certain foods that we eat that actually create stress within the body that we don't necessarily think about. And it is that kind of that stressor upon stressor upon stressor that we don't realise we have. And then when you add in everything else, it takes us to that point where actually we're having to work really hard to hold things together, or we're having to face the fact that we can't, but we don't know what to do about it often if we're in that position. So if we are in that position, Gill, where maybe we're recognising that we've got a lot of pressure and we're recognising that we're starting to crumble, but we don't know what to do because we don't want to fall apart, but we don't know how to change things, what's the first step?
The first step is, excuse me, look at your life, look at what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
write it all down, journal it. What are you doing in the day?
Okay.
Take yesterday. What were you doing in the day or the day before? When did you feel not right? What was not right about it? What were you doing? What were you eating? What did you eat? What have you eaten in the last week? Write it down, because we're not aware half the time. We're just picking, oh, I'm hungry, I'm just have this. I'm
Autopilot.
busy. Yes, it's all autopilot.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing we can do. You need proper meal times for start with, which isn't always easy when you're on the run.
Mm.
But make sure that you pre-plan your meals, and then you can take it with you. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Instead of, oh God, I'll just go get a bar of chocolate and a bag of crisps from the shop, when I put my petrol in.
Yeah.
It's all to do with planning and things like that, but it's also looking at, how are you feeling? How's it making you feel?
Yeah.
How's it making you feel inside? Do you want to cry? Can you not cry? There's just so many things. What emotions are coming up for you? Write it all down, write it all out. And you might cry when you write down everything that's going on. It might make you cry. Let it out. Then you can have a look and say, okay, then I don't like this, what's going on. How am I going to start, sort of getting myself back on track? What's the one thing you can do? One big thing you can do is go out for a walk in nature. Take yourself out. And I don't mean for 20 minutes, like they say. Go out for an hour. Go down a cycle path. Go down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even in the rain, even if it's raining, put your hood up, put your brolly up, go and have a walk.
Walking in the rain can be quite liberating though, can't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Because
And then you come back and you feel great.
Yeah.
You're soaking wet through, and then you go and get in the shower and,
And it's also, I suppose it's one of those things, isn't it? I suppose when we write everything down, everything that we've done and maybe everything that we've thought or everything that we're feeling, but when we write everything down that we've done in a day, I suppose that's a place where we can really start to recognise that maybe some of the things that we're doing or some of the things that we're thinking about that are contributing to us not feeling great are actually really not that important.
Definitely. I mean, what I do every morning is I do, what's her name? Julia Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
Morning.
The Artist's Book. The Artist's Way.
The Artist's Way. And I do morning pages every morning. And I sit for just 20 minutes when I get up with my cup of tea and just write every thought that's in my head. And if I haven't got any thoughts that's in my head, I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything until something else pops up. And then, and I just you don't stop writing. You just flow.
Yeah.
And it's liberating.
It is.
Absolutely liberating.
And I think there's a beautiful art to actually writing, because we spend a lot of our day tapping on the phone, don't we? We spend a lot of our day tapping on the computer, but actually to have a pen and a paper and to have that connection flowing through you as you are actually physically writing, for me, it's always been cathartic.
Yeah,
and there are things that come out when I'm actually physically writing that never come out if I'm typing, that never come out if I'm thinking. But that actual act of writing for me, that physical process of writing, is actually, I guess, an activation or a catalyst in some respects to really allowing stuff to flow from me or to flow through me so that I can then have a deeper level of awareness.
Yeah, I mean, with morning pages, you don't have to read it.
Yeah.
You don't need to read it. Throw it away if you want. Throw the pages away.
Yeah.
But I don't, and I've looked back 3 months later and thought, was this in my head? Where did this come from? And some really good ideas have been there. Do you know what I mean? As well.
Yeah.
So it's yes, it is cathartic. It is.
Yeah.
But with stress, if you write down, it's like I always say, like, because I'm a sleep person as well. I used to do sleep clinics at the hospital. And it's like with your sleep, take a notepad and pen to bed with you.
Yeah.
Then if you wake up and your brain goes, ding, I forgot this, I forgot that, write it down. As soon as it's out of your head, your brain goes, I can relax now, because I don't have to worry about that anymore, because I know I'll remember it because it's there on my pad. Yeah. So it's little things like that. Writing is just the best thing you can do. I mean, unfortunately for me, I've got doctor's handwriting now, and I think it's with studying all my life. I write, my hand goes quicker than my brain.
Absolutely, mine does too. But at least we're the only people that have to read your own handwriting. So
that's where it's not very good, because I started writing my book I'm writing. I started writing it handwritten because that's how I prefer to write.
Yeah.
But I was looking back, I couldn't read it. So I have to use a computer now. I have to type it.
Obviously, the universe has a plan for a better book, yes? Or at least for a better couple of opening chapters.
At least a book.
Gill, if I were to ask you what is soul to you, my love?
Soul, to me, is the essence of who I am. It is not, it is like you say, your intuition, and it is intuition, but it's something deeper to me than that. It's what everything is. Do you know what I mean? It's like the source of everything comes from soul, comes from your soul.
Mm.
Um, people have God and they call, the universe, they call it anything, anything they want. But to me, I'm part of everything. And
And
that's what my soul is.
and everything is part of you. You're part of
Yeah,
everything, and everything is part of you.
that's right. Yeah. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah. And that's a really beautiful analogy because it really makes you feel connected to everything beautiful in life, doesn't it, as well?
It does.
But also to recognize, and I always think that we can't see things in anything else that we don't have within us, whether that's on the lovely side of things or whether it's on the negative side of things. So to really be able to see that beauty in everything around you, it's because there's that beauty that's
Inside.
deeply within you as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. It is. It's like one of the stressful times I had, the last one actually, was to do with a colleague at work. And when I was out of the situation and I'm looking back on it, it was a reflection of how I was being anyway.
Mm.
Not how I was being, but it was reflecting back to me. You're not perfect. You you probably do get on your nerves. Who knows? To me, it was another sort of aha moment
Yeah,
for me, and that came from inside. I sat with myself and thought, why is she being like this? And I thought, well, there's two. There's up and down. There's in and out. There's roundabouts. There's polarity in everything. There's good and bad. There's shouting at you and whispering. There's opposites wherever you go, and there's also opposites within you.
yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? So what you're seeing presented to you, what's going on inside here, um, that's a similar thing.
Mm.
You're being. It's
Yeah,
sort of reflecting part of who you are.
absolutely. And
That's the way I saw it.
we see things, and we recognize things from our perspective because there is that repository within us that where we do recognize situations, experiences, people as reflections of something within us that we need to be aware of, to recognize, to acknowledge, to see, or to heal, whichever way we look at it. But I do believe that, and particularly people in situations, but particularly people are really great reflectors. So when we're feeling reactive, that's an opportunity, isn't it, to actually stop, just to sit and think, actually, what is really going on here? Why am I really experiencing this in this way? And really allowing that insight from deep within us to rise and say, well, actually, Nick, it's because of this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was a ward sister. This was after the intensive care unit. I was a ward sister on a respiratory ward, and we used to have like debriefing after a
Mm.
shift, and anybody could say anything that they wanted to say. I didn't want anybody to hold anything back.
Yeah.
If something was bothering them, I wanted to get it out of them before they went home. Do you know what I mean? And the things that came up were fascinating, absolutely fast. Once people felt safe, they were in a safe space and nobody was going to shout at them or anything like that. The things that came up were absolutely fascinating. And I'm hoping that they went home. They said they did. They went home and felt so much better and they were able to have a better evening, to
Mm.
me. So I think looking inwards and even being open and discussing things with others about how you're feeling and things like that, and you can
Yeah.
actually see what's
I,
going. It's just fascinating.
it is fascinating. And also what struck me as you've said that is that that's the people pleaser being healed, isn't it? Because actually, one of if because you feel a freedom to say what you need to say, that doesn't happen when you are people pleasing, because you're worried generally about how people are going to perceive you, what they're going to think of you, what they're going to say if you don't meet or fulfill the expectation that you believe they have of you.
Yeah, and that's probably why, knowing I'm a big people pleaser, which I suppose most of us are really, but I am a big, big people pleaser, and that's been part of my problem. Is That's probably why I wanted everybody to, because I want people to get on. I don't want people sort of arguing with each other and, by the bedside and things like that. I want everybody to be able to express themselves without being shouted down all the time.
Yeah.
Which is probably part of what had happened to me through my childhood and stuff like that. I mean, it all comes back, doesn't it, and to who you are inside.
Yeah, and
So,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because whatever we think, it's never just one thing. We are never singular. There's a whole raft of things that get mixed into the equation, and we are very layered, very complex, very multi-dimensional
yeah,
beings. And when we recognise that one thing is not going to change everything, but one thing can be the start of changing everything. And it comes back to that one step on the journey, doesn't it? That one moment of recognising that the only person that can change anything is you.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
and taking
right.
that step.
Yeah, that's right.
Gill, thank you for sharing this time with us today. If I were to ask you if there was one thing that you wanted to leave the listeners and the watchers with today, what would that be?
The one thing I'd like to leave people with is you are you. You're probably not what you think you are. Look into yourself. Have a sit with yourself. Have a good sit with yourself, and journal how you feel. Journal your feelings, and just see what comes out for you as to who you actually are. And I don't mean your likes and dislikes and things like that. I just mean your feelings, how your feelings are. And if you're starting to feel a little bit stressed and things like that, get some help. Doesn't matter who it is. Go talk to a friend. Change your diet. You know, we all eat rubbish. I mean, I'm vegan. That was through my research, but I'm vegan, whole food, plant based. I turned vegan later because of the animals, but originally it was whole food, plant based through my research. But whatever you eat, we all eat rubbish. It doesn't matter who you are because it's there in the shops. It's just there. And if you're a little bit hungry, you'll like I said, you'll go and back a bar of chocolate and a bag of crisps if you're hungry and stuff like that. So have a good think about what you're putting into your body. How's your liver coping with your alcohol consumption? Because the poor thing is really overworked. I know mine was, and that's why I stopped drinking, because I was drinking every day. And that was through stress, to me. So there's all these little things. What are your colleagues like? Who are you friends with? Who do you look up to? How would you feel inside? What's your intuition telling you? To me, there's all these little things. Where do you live? Do you need to go for a walk in a forest or go by the seaside? Go and do it. If your gut says do it, go and do it.
And I guess all of that comes back to just taking a moment, doesn't it? Pausing.
Yeah.
And just really starting to maybe listen to who you are, to what you need, but also starting to really be aware of what you don't need.
Exactly.
Maybe of the things that are just filling a little bit of a void somewhere for some reason.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Gill, it's been an absolute joy to chat to you. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. And obviously all of Gill's details will be in the show notes, so please do connect. And she's a gorgeous lady who I happen to have met in person. I haven't met all of my podcast guests in person, but I have had the pleasure of meeting Gill. So an absolute joy to spend some time with you today, Gill, and thank you so much.
It's been lovely, Nicola. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And so, to everyone listening or watching, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful few days, whatever you're doing, and obviously stay being soul confident.